Hey everybody. Thanks for checking out another Saturday stream, Saturday night stream. Here we are. It's week 31 we're at. It's going pretty good. I feel like the project. I don't know if you guys have been following it too much. Happy if you're new here. Thanks for tuning in. This Saturday stream of mine is working on my OS in the browser that I've been working on for years, I'd say. The idea, and I've had a few prototypes, a few different versions, and this is my latest version. This one I've been working on just since the start of the year. This being 31 weeks into the year, this is my 31st video on it, and work on it in my evenings as well to kind of prepare for these streams. So I have a branch that's got some code changes that we're going to check out for today and apply to the main branch. And feel free to throw me a comment if you're reading this after the fact, or throw me a message in the chat if you want to talk live. And throw me a like if you end up liking the video, or you like my past videos and you feel like you're going to like this one. And if you want to keep aware of my videos, or just to motivate me, or just to be cool, then throw me a subscribe, because they're much appreciated. I like them. I like to know that when I do post a video that people are being notified. So there's an opportunity to check it out, because I like doing these videos not just for myself, but for people that are interested in this kind of thing, and to be able to tune what I'm doing to be more interesting to people. The more eyes I get on it, the more feedback I'm hoping to get. The code as well too, on the source code, everything. Honestly, feel free to criticize me in any way. I'll take it. I might get a bit hurt, but I appreciate the criticism. Preferred constructive. I mean, anyone can just do criticism, but constructive criticism is much more valuable. Anyways, let's jump right into the code here and see what I got on my notes. So my notes are pretty basic today. Also, you'll see I got some fancy mood lighting today. I'm doing blue light in front and purple in the back with the purple shirt. Don't know why. The purple and blue just look best on Philips Hue lights, and I seem to have a lot of purple shirts, I guess. I don't know what's up there. Also today powered by the soda stream that my wife made. Not a Red Bull day today. Just didn't remember to get one, so say Libby. Yeah, we don't even have to jump into the code. I pretty much just gave you the gist of everything. Let's go jump into the code, the new code, the branch for this week, and see what the heck have I done this week. What have I done? And just quickly, we could quickly see the project here. This is the repo. This is the main repo for V1. We're already on the redo branch here. Got 636 commits in. 1 week ago was my last one, which is my previous video, of course. And today we're working off a branch which I call redo episode 31. Worked on it in some evenings, just with some ideas, and they were fun. I always enjoy doing it. So here's the app, by the way, running. Starting to look a bit more like an OS. It's got a lot of things it can do, and it's going to do more today. Still got some work to do on File Explorer, but I got some big plans for it. Shortcuts are coming along. Right-click menus are coming along. Got some cool ones. We're going to add upload today. I think we're going to add I'm trying to remember what else we're going to add today. There's too many things to remember, honestly. But yeah, we're going to add a bunch. So there's emulators in here. We got the Linux emulator. Or that's just a general x86 emulator, actually. We got DOS emulator here, so you can do like a Doom or something or anything. Got some guy's Winamp creation here that's a pretty perfect copy. It's a really, really good one. I had these minimized here. We're going to fix some bugs today, as always. Going to keep working on Peek here, the little Peek preview window at the bottom. Always improving it. Got some new ideas for today. Got the Flash emulator, too, that I like to show you guys. Do the badger. If you guys remember that Flash video. Mushroom. Classic one. There's other ones, too. There's Window RG. This one I almost feel like is like a version of Windows inside my version of Windows. Because it's like a fake Windows made in Flash, but it's a pretty good one. It's like a parody. Mine's less so a parody, but being able to run Flash is kind of cool. So you could drag an SWF file in there of your own and play it. What other things I got? Winamp skins I support. So this is my favorite skin, SpyAmp Pro. But you can just go back to the default one too. That's about it for what I got at the moment going on. It's a lot. Clock's decently synced up. There's tons of animations I'm working on, so let's just dig into the new stuff, right? First, let's have a little more of the soda. Actually, let's chase it with some water, because it is really hot today. I'm up here in Canada, by the way. We're going through a bit of a heat wave up here in BC. Heat wave, better. I'd rather a heat wave than a heat dome, if you guys know the difference. It's not ideal. Okay, so this was the repo. We're done with that. To the branch. So I'm just gonna go commit by commit, because that's easier. And some notes that I put for myself here is mind the reverts. You know, like mind the gap. In other words, I have some reverts along the way here. I reverted here. I reverted here. So essentially 4 of these commits we can ignore. I'm just not going to do them this time. I tried to get it working where you think it would be easy. You close a maximized window, and when you open it again, it's maximized. But it's not super easy to get that all working with how I had the animations and everything. It was just really jank, and it started moving every time I'd reopen it. So I decided to just revert it. I think it was also causing some other issues too. And what was this one? Yeah, this was my first attempt to fix the peak part. But I do end up refactoring it again here in a much better way. But my first time was a swing and a miss. I think I do a refactor a couple times this episode where I was like making a hook, and then in the hook I was passing a component and then using that. I've decided not to pass components. Instead, I'll just import the component, and the hook will give me like a boolean to toggle whether to show the component. Because there's a few cases where I need to do this like dynamic appearing of a component kind of thing. Anyways, first one's simple enough. Update packages. I think that's just, yeah, we're just going to do a good old-fashioned yarn command. So we'll start with yarn outdated and see what's outdated. I'm going to make this bigger. This is too small. There we go. So we got quite a bit. Let's close this, in fact, too. Let's just keep making it bigger. I'm going to rerun the command and see a longer list. Here we go. That's a little more legible. ESLint, some plugins. Looks like the Jest plugin. So looking at these, I'd go, okay, the Jest plugin is going to update. Maybe I need to run a test again just to make sure testing didn't break. Although it's a minor update, it's still version 24. So probably not too big a deal. This one's an every time thing because I'm importing from the GitHub repo directly. It's got this exotic, whatever the heck that means. Just ignore that. Anyways, there's a few updates here. This one I'm just doing type, so it's not a big deal. Most of these are just dev dependencies, so it's not even going to be a big deal. I mean, the Jest one is for testing purposes, same with testing library. HTML image, that's cool that they're updating that all the time, because there's still some improvements to be made there. Anyways, let's just do an update. Oh, it's upgrade. And then I do -- latest, I think it is. And then that'll update the package file as well, which is a critical feature for me that NPM got rid of. I don't know if they brought it back at this point, but they got rid of it, so it was enough to annoy me, which is quite easy to do, to be honest. There we go. We got that update. Let's see what changed here. Package JSON. So yeah, just like we expected, HTML image, music metadata browser, sorry. And then a bunch of type definitions and some testing possible stuff. So I could run yarn test. This is assuming my test worked in the first place. And I'll say test singular, by the way. Yes, I only have one test. It's the most basic test just to get the framework up. I guess I keep questioning often, like, am I going to write tests at some point? And I probably should. I definitely feel embarrassed about it, but I'm not going to do it. So there you go. Eventually I will write tests, but is that a lie? I'm not sure. I feel like I've told myself that before. Hard to be honest with myself on that one. I'd like to write tests. Is that good enough? Okay, let's add this to the first notes. I also had a link here to this instance of command that we'll get to, operator, as they're calling it. Oh, sorry, I gotta try to get comfortable in my chair. But yeah, we're gonna get to this in a moment. I just got late. I don't know why I put the link here. This is such a simple link to look up. Let's just look it up when we get there. Simple one, committed into the redo branch. Let's move on. Let's have more water while we're at it too. I'm not well planned out this episode, by the way, guys. I actually did a video earlier today too, if you guys want to check it out later, with where I use GitHub Copilot. It's been pretty fun. So here's one of the things I wanted to change, this generic separator. Yeah, I was using this group concept for separating my menu items. If you go here, like, oops, what have I broken here? Oh, right, I probably need to rerun the npm dev command. When you do a bunch of package updates, it is not always happy with that. It should almost understand when a package update occurs and like really hard reboot itself. It doesn't seem to have a mechanism to hard reboot itself. And it's slow to start back up. I mean, it shouldn't be. It feels like, is that my computer being slow? Where's the failure here? I see it booting up though now in the background. Let's switch over to the code just to see it. So there we go, compiled successfully. Now it works. All right, so just this little separator right here. And in some instances, I think I have several. I'm not sure how I can make it appear, but in some instances, I have several, I believe. I don't know where the example is. Gonna change it though. I'm gonna use this constant called menu separator. And otherwise, I think I did some other piece of work. I think the reason I was doing numbering is because of the key, because React requires a unique key. And I've decided what I'll do, and it's not always considered a best practice here, is I will fall back to index when there's no label. So for separators, there's no label to give a unique key. So in those cases, I'm using an index. Now, it's not a good idea to use index for key, because if you'd expect perhaps for the items to change, but you only want the items to change that actually have changed, or for React to only update those. So if you use unique well-named keys that don't change even when the array order changes, that's better for React. But in this case, I think I pretty much know that the items never change. The context menu is what it is, kind of. So I'm going to use it in this case because it means I don't have to try to have unique keys for these separators, that I want to just be simple. So with that being said, let's do that. I don't know if I'll get through all these, to be honest, guys. I added a few at just yesterday, and I'm like, stop adding stuff, Dustin. You're doing adding too many things. So we'll see. Menu separator. I'm just gonna replace all the times where I'm using group. Yeah, here was an instance where 2 could be created, I guess. Here and then another one here, I guess. Oh, for new, right. Not within the same menu then, but even though they weren't within the same menu, they were within a submenu, so I think they, again, needed unique keys, which was annoying. Although, no, I guess not, because then you'd have the same issue with that index, because it's the same index. Yeah, so I could have, in this case, probably used group 1, because they're in different menus, actually. One's a submenu, and then the way they render, I think it would be unique to React. Anyways. Man, it's so hot in my office. I'm sorry, guys. I feel like I should bring the fan in. I might in a minute. We'll see. We'll see if I start to feel like passing out from this heat. What's the temperature? I'm surprised. Richmond weather. 22 Celsius at 9 p.m. That's hot. And not the Paris Hilton kind, if anyone remembers that reference. I don't even know why I remember that reference, honestly. Where is this constant? Oh, I've also changed it from being called group to separator. That's reasonable. Let's find some groups. Oh, we have one here that I totally missed somehow. And then group, I'm just going to switch to be called separator, because that just sounds better. It makes more sense here, too. If it's a separator, use HR, otherwise don't. Don't know why we're getting tons of red here. I think it's complaining about some of the updated types or something. Let's ignore that for now because it's wrong, but if I close VS Code and reopen it, I bet it'll stop being silly. Now, as far as alphabetizing this, I wonder if I want to. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S. Oh, it's actually alphabetized. It actually was wrong when group was at the bottom, and now it's correct, so that's a win-win. All right, I'm going to call that one good. What was the other piece to this puzzle? Right, using the index. Where was that necessary? That was up here. Here we go, yeah. So now it's saying key. Yeah, there's no group anymore. So now it's actually just going to be index, and index is something you can get as the second argument from the map command. And that should shut that up. Although it's not. Wasn't that the change I did? Yeah. I'm getting a lot of bugginess. I'm going to close VS Code in a second as soon as we finish this change. I just want to finish finishing this group part. Get this group out of here. What's left with group? Here it is. So group, no, elemental PQRS separator. Otherwise, this was already alphabetically correct. Did this match? Menu item. What was the other thing here? Oh, this wasn't. This was for a file entry, was it? Yeah, for file entry. Where? Oh no, this is the menu item entry. Was this the structure? Let me double check that. Action, disabled, icon, label, menu, primary, reset menu. Really? The heck's reset menu? That's something I'm using? Oh, okay. It's up here. Defined in this additional thing. Well, it's a good thing I have TypeScript here. It's a good thing I've written these types, you know? That's one thing that's like, you won't remember your code. I don't remember that. When the heck did I write that? Okay, we've got most of the separator thing. We just don't have that constant yet. Yeah, so as far as the constant itself, I've made it pretty darn simple. Let's go to constants here. And I'll just paste it in here, yeah. So I'm just calling it, it's just, whereas before it was group and then the number as the index, now I'm just saying separator and it's a Boolean as true. Pretty simple. I'm not going to go too crazy with it. So let's save all this. I think, yeah, it feels like a lot of changes, but I think it's okay. Menu separator, yeah, that's better than the groups. Much more explicit sounding. Yeah. Yep, separator, menu, separator. This is much easier to remember too than having to know that group needs a number and you have to iterate them if you're gonna have two in the same menu. That was always silly. Okay, let's quickly take a peek and make sure I didn't break nothing. So there's a separator still, I can see it, and here's another one here, so it worked. And I don't get any console errors saying the keys are messed up. So I'm gonna consider that a success. And I'm gonna do one more search for the word group just to make sure I got it all. Group. And then I'll shrink these down and see. So whenever they're yellow like this, the icons, that's the JavaScript files. And seeing as how my whole project's pretty much TypeScript, I ignore the JavaScript files because those are library files. And then this is a markdown file. That's just text. So there's no TypeScript files with the word group, which means I pretty much got rid of it all. We'll call it use generic separator. We're going to close all these, bring the notes back, and add that to it. There we go. Let's see what GitHub Copilot says the next thing is. Update packages. No, I just did that. What if I say fix? What does it think's broken? 1819. What the heck's that? I don't know that. It knows about secret numbers I don't know about. Alright. Still pretty darn hot in here. Switch over to browser. Finish this one. What's next? Use empty buffer. Yeah, this is where I got on like a whole constant tangent where it's like more constants. So I was thinking this one here, buffer.from. Many times I'm creating this empty buffer. And I was thinking, aren't all empty buffers kind of equivalent? Like, can't I just use one constant empty buffer? And then, seems like it could be more performant. Might just be a totally unnecessary optimization. But at the same time, I also like, compared to like buffer.from and then an empty string, like that's almost like, okay, you need to know what the buffer command is. Versus a constant called empty buffer, it's like, okay, give me an empty buffer. I don't even want to think about it. So I think from a coding point of view, it makes a little more sense. So let's put an empty buffer in here, and it's just that basically that buffer from. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go into search replace. We're going to say replace, and we're going to replace them all. We're going to make sure to copy this one because it's going to replace our one that has to stay the same. So let's say replace all, say yep. It's going to replace them all. Oh, nice. It's smart enough not to replace this one, I guess, because it wasn't in the original search. That might be the case. Let's try this now. Let's clear the search and do it again, and there should be one. Yeah, just the constant. Okay. I don't know if it was smart or what, but it didn't overwrite the one that I didn't. Oh, because I hadn't saved it yet. Okay. Cool. So it was actually well planned on my part. Oh, now we have to do all the imports. Now, I wonder if I do save again, it might just auto-import. I'm going to have to do a save for each file. I have a VS Code auto-importing, so let's just try it here. Save. Yeah, it's doing them now. Save, but I got to go into each one. Save, just so that it auto-imports. Auto-save, auto-save, auto-save. I think that might have covered us. Why is it complaining about read error? Implicitly has type any. That's that VS Code issue, actually. That's just VS Code being wrong. But the empty buffer issues stopped, I think, for the most part. It's hard to tell with all these errors. I think it's, unfortunately, we're going to have to close VS Code and reopen it. So let's just do that right now. I've already got everything saved. Close VS Code. Now watch, if we open it again, I'm going to have to reorient my streaming software so that it can find VS Code again. There it is. Now, as you can see, when I hover over read error, oh look, now it's an iBrowser FS error. So I had the types. VS Code. There's got to be some fix for that, and I'm just doing it really wrong, I guess, because I run into that a lot. So there we go. So we've just replaced all these buffer commands, because as I think of it, every time you run this fs read file command and you create a callback here where you do that buffer.from command, it has to go into the buffer class, run the from function with the empty string passed in, and do whatever it does to create an empty buffer. Unless the browser's optimizing that away because it knows that it's an empty one. But I've kind of done that now, and like I say, the constant itself has a value from a ease of development point of view. So that's why I consider that an improvement, and why I decided to sit you guys down and watch it. I'm just closing my folders again so I can add that to my notes. Sorry that I'm doing it secretly here. I had you guys in the wrong window there. There we go. Let's check out the next one. Check for buffer before converting. That sounds smart. Okay, this is a simple change. I think this is where I started to get into using instance of. Let me just make sure I didn't revert this one. What are the ones I reverted? Because I got to watch out. Yeah, it was just those two. Okay, I don't want to get revert shy or whatever. So here's where I started using instance of. So let's go take a peek at that, because I only just started using this. The instance of operator tests to see if the prototype property of a constructor appears anywhere in the prototype chain of an object. The return value is a Boolean value. So you can see you can do instance of for a car here in this case, or object. It seems quite useful to me. It seems like a nice extension to TypeScript for doing detection instead of the type of, and getting this very inaccurate, like type of object. Okay, it's like almost everything's an object, you know. But this instance of, I just prefer it. So I haven't seen really the downsides to it, to be honest. It seems quite compatible. I hadn't been using it for a while, but yeah, so here they're just like object. I wonder if TypeScript's doing a little magic in the background, because I've been very specific with objects recently and it seems to be okay. Maybe I'm just being naive, but like, let's say here I did array buffer. That's not even in their example. I don't know if an array buffer is like a native type or whatever. Yeah, I mean, it is. So, hey, why not, right? Because I do some deep ones. I do like let's get into it in a bit, because I do a few. I started using instance of, but if it works, great, right? So let's copy this change and find, where the heck did I do this? The only other buffer.from. Okay. Buffer.from. So there's two probably. Yeah, there's the empty one now, and there's the one that's this one. So I'm going to replace it with this, basically. Oops. No oops, but go back one here. Yeah, there we go. So that's the old one, and this is the new one. What have I added here? A condition here where I make sure that this thing I'm passing into the new array should be an array, instead of doing this typecasting too. It also makes me avoid this. So whereas before I'm like, hey, trust me, this is an array buffer, but it might not be, honestly, because this is just pure TypeScript. This one I get some real protection, where it's actually like checking, is this going to work here? Because it's expecting an array, or an array-like thing. So I think it just makes more sense. Otherwise, this command's exactly the same. Here it put itself on 4 lines, but then this way it was able to optimize itself because it didn't have to do that as part, because now I explicitly check it. So I actually, in some ways, made it a little smaller, but had to add that, so I didn't completely. Anyway, I like it. It's an improvement. Instance of, we're going to start using it more. Let's commit it. I'm committed to committing it. What's next? Instance of the power. Let's see how many other times. Okay, this is just pretty minor, actually. Yeah, this is just simplifying it here. So before I had, what did I have here? Yeah, I would just say like related target. There's no related target, but now I'm like, rather than that, there could be a related target. Wait a minute, what am I saying here? Oh, if there's no related target or it's contained within here. Yeah, so this could be something that isn't an HTML element. Here I'm just saying, oh, these are the cases where I've started using instance of, because when you do this as, you're just saying to TypeScript, oh, I know what it is, wink, wink, but you get no protection on runtime. Versus this instance of, you get a little bit of protection. You know, it has to be an HTML element, otherwise we're not moving forward. Basically, is the new thing, and then I get rid of this type 1. So let's do that. Where's this menu item entry? So here I go Control P, and then I type menu item. And here I can see it in the list. Then I jump to it by clicking it. And then I try to find that line based on where it was on GitHub. So as you can see there, it said it was line 31. Assuming this code is the same code, then on line 31, yar sheeplo. I just paste this in here. And I've made the first line a little bigger and the second line a little smaller. And I've made it more runtime safe versus I hope this works safe. That was one, and I believe there's 2 of them that I did. Another one in the menu index, Control P, and I type menu, and then I look for index typically. No, not as easily. Let's do /. Here we go, index right away. No, it wasn't that one. Darn it. Menu / index. It was actually this one I wanted. Yeah, here we go. And it's the same example here. Pretty much used the same way. Now, how do I know that I didn't break these? This one here would be reset menu. So the menu should go away when I blur, or just in general should still work. This one is for peak, is it? What is this one for? Oh, this is also for the menu. I basically didn't I didn't change the function of this condition, so you would hope it works. Ideally, you'd test it, but we're going a little quicker here. I think you should probably just trust that I've tested it. I mean, honestly, you shouldn't trust that. Let's test it. I don't trust that I didn't break it, so let's check. Let's just try to break it. Let's just see if it's obviously broken. Okay, yeah, I broke everything. No, this is because I closed VS Code, so it closed my yarn dev command. So that's going to load for a second. In the meantime, let's paste what it'll be called. Check instances of related target. Paste it in here, and then we'll go check it before we commit it. Let's see. Right-click, blur, blur. Go here. Stays open. Yeah, nice. So that's working. It's got the logic to know this is contained within this, so don't blur that until you go like this out of it, right? So here, if I go here, it disappears right away, but if I go here, it doesn't disappear right away. You know what I mean? Don't you know? Okay. That's good. That's what I wanted. Commit that. And jump into whatever the heck the next thing is. Fix Twitchy. Isn't this the one that I didn't like? Yeah, this is the one I end up reverting. So let's not even look at whatever that monstrosity was, and let's just move past it. What's this next one here? Use path join instead of strings. Yeah, this is an interesting fix. So in a few cases, I just tried to make like the path myself, but there's a path command, and in general, I'm trying to use path whenever possible because I'm trying to also emulate the node fs commands. I think it's just more consistent to use path as well. So in these cases, I'm gonna change it basically. There's not too many of them, but let's go through them. So there's like one here in JS DOS with a zip function. Let's do that one first, I guess. Oops, yeah, let's close actually some of these. So first one I'm going to search for, and the way that I do search really quick is I do Control Shift F. So if I'm on the Windows here and I just do Control Shift F, it takes you to the search for everything. So that's a handy one. And then I saw the word in GitHub here, I saw the word walked path. That seems unique, you know? Like I'm not going to search, okay, it's const is there. Let's search for const, you know? You got 1,000 results. Walked path, probably not going to get many results for that. So if I just search for, let's just say I search for walked, there's not going to be many. There you go. There's only 2. So I click it. That's the first definition. Here's the path that I want to change. That's kind of how I just like search around code. Anyways, let's change this. So what I'm changing it to is this join command where it just takes the pieces of the path and then puts it together. Basically what I was doing here, but this is a tiny bit smarter. It doesn't really make too much of a difference in most cases where I'm using it here, but it's semantically more the way that I'd like to do it. Import from path. Yep. Okay. I think we were already pretty much getting that function from some other place. I was using join somewhere else, I believe, already. Yeah, here I'm using it. So with Webpack's intelligence, it was already somewhere. Let's go to the next one here. That's another simple one. It's going to have by the system files. Let's do the same technique. Search for system underscore files. There you go. Very few entries. I think it's this one here. Which one is it actually? Oh, yes, this here. So this path here, I was just smushing directory and file together. Instead, we're going to use the join command. To me, it looks a little cleaner anyways. You could even do more clean and just import all of path, because then at least you get path.join. There's something nice about that, because then, oh, you know we're doing about the path versus having to go join. I mean, here the beauty with TypeScript is if I hover over join, it'll tell me things. So join all arguments together and normalize the resulting path. Great. That's what I want. That's better than just making a string, and then you look at it, you say, oh, directory in a file. Okay, this is a string for a path. But if you see it's part of a join command, there's no, you shouldn't be using a join command just to put a string together, you know? It's for putting a path together, and that's what I was trying to do. That's the kind of explicitness that I prefer in my code, that I obviously don't always do because I'm changing my own code right here. So we need to find another one. This time it's file manager functions. I'll just search for the file this time. Functions, and it's the file manager one. And where was the path? Here it is there. Is it this one? Oh yeah, it is that one. That one looks complicated. It still looks pretty much the same. In this case, this piece here was the whole file name, so that's just one entry. So it's basically just your file name and the directory name of the original path. It looks nice though to me. I'm happy with it. Better than a string in my opinion. In this case, you could argue that, oh, hey, why are you adding a function? You already know what the path should be. But it could change, you know, it could change, but you'd hope that the join command would handle that versus my string that I just made is not going to handle it because it's just some string that happens to work in this one case. It's not as powerful as that join command claims to be. So for this one here, we're going to change it a bit. I'm just going to paste the two little pieces that I got here. Actually, this was basically the gist of it. This changes into a bracket, though. Let me just paste it like this. Oh, why didn't that change the way I wanted it to? Ah, okay, this little piece changes. Jeez. I did not do that change gracefully. Let me just bring back what it looked like before, so I can explain it to myself. Yeah, this was just another one of the same. Directory. See, in this case here, I don't think I needed this. This was a piece where it was helpful. Yeah, exactly. So here I had this logic, directory equals /, then don't put a slash, otherwise put a slash. That's the kind of thing join knows how to do. So in this case, instead of having this piece, I got rid of that piece completely. And I could just say directory, the name, and then the extension if it was a shortcut. Put the extension back on. So there's an example where it actually paid off, which is good because I wasn't sure I actually had a good example. Yeah, so I bypassed this little logic by using join. And in this case, the same, I think, too. You see, I had slashes built in here to know those divisions, but if you're just putting it in as arguments, to me, that's cleaner. I think this is all of them. Let me get this last one here. This is on the icon file. This is it here. There we go. Turn it into that command. It's a little longer, but you don't have those little forward slashes. You're not making a string now. I think I imported join in all cases. What's it complaining about here? Oh, I forgot my comma. Yeah, there we go. Let's go take a look at the change and make sure I didn't miss something. So I imported join and then used it. Yeah, imported. And whoa. Empty buffer wasn't imported last time? Why is empty buffer there? That's weird. Oh, wait, what happened there? That's weird. It's like I didn't have empty buffer in that one commit. Darn it. That was a mistake on my part. Well, we're just going to slip it in here. It's not, not everything has to be perfect here. Another import there. Yep, that's nice. See, this one's missing the import. Maybe I'm already using join. Yeah, I was already using join somewhere else in this file. And there it imported. So that looks pretty clean as far as the change goes. I think it was just in those 5 places, but now also if I search for join, I know, okay, these are the places where I'm making a path versus trying to search for a template literal. It'd be like, this is just the place where I put strings together. There could be 100 of these. So I'll just save this and then I'll actually show you what I was just talking about. So it's like if I wanted to know, hey, where are the places where I made paths? If I just do join and then the first bracket, There you go, pretty much. This is these files, not including the libs. This one, this one, this one. You see, I just tracked down all the little places where I built paths, basically, by doing that command. Much handier than if I was to say, okay, here is where I did a template literal where I started with a variable. How many are there? I mean, there's more, you know. This one here, that wasn't a path. That's a process that I was working on, so it's better. What's next? Where were we in this list? Oh yeah, we just finished that day's worth of stuff. How many more of these do I got? Too many, honestly. Was this the other one that I end up reverting? Restore maximized? Yeah. Okay, so this is another one, and the start and the finish we can ignore. We'll just focus on this 3-piece here. Allow renaming on creation of file. This is a nice one. I'm going to do some copy pasting this time, I think, because it looks like I do some bigger changes. Although, to be honest, the changes look pretty minor. But let's copy paste so we don't make a mistake, and then let's look over the changes is what we'll do. I'm going to take it one by one here. First one being the used folder context. Used folder context file. I'm just going to copy the raw file and paste in my changes here, and we'll take a peek at what I changed there. So yeah, I went from the action being new path to now the action is new, and then I made these constants here for the name because I need to use it twice. So new folder is called new folder every time, and a new text document is always new text document.txt. So we still have the new path just like before with the constant, but now we also have this set renaming where we tell the file manager that we want to rename this file right now. And here this is still the same with the empty buffer and so we're using 2 constants there. And then also I'm having to pass in the set renaming dispatch now. So that's a new dispatch function that we'll get to. But that's obviously necessary to pass that up, that information that, hey, I want to rename this. You know, you got to pass that up the chain. That was the first part. What's the next piece of the list here? So now we need to go to the file manager itself. Oh, it burns. It's too bright. Light mode. I need Chrome to open text. Like, even when you do view source, I want that in dark mode, you know? Everything dark mode forever. Let's go to file manager index. Here it is. And again, we'll just do a copy paste just to replace. And then we look at the diff here to see what actually changed. So here's where I started doing that renaming state. So here's the set renaming dispatch along with what's being renamed. Nothing by default, of course. And what else have I added here? Ah, yes, here's where I passed in that set renaming to the right-click menu. Right, because the right-click menu is what's doing the new file, new folder. And here I've added 2 parameters to the file entry. The renaming state, so it knows... So I've kind of changed the logic of how renaming works a bit, too, to move it up to the file manager. Before it was on a per file entry basis. Now it's on the... For each file, we get a check on it. Is renaming equal the file, basically. Only one file can be renamed, so this is only going to be true on one of these entries. And I also pass set renaming, so the file entry itself can trigger rename. Why? Does that make sense? Let's move to the next one, because I'm questioning why. I'm not 100% sure on this piece. Let's double check. Move on to the file entry, which is not this one. I want to skip ahead to the file entry. Here it is. There's only 4 files involved here, and it doesn't look like a huge amount of changes. Usually try to keep the files in general pretty small if I can, and I try to split them up into a bunch of files. Usually if it's 80 lines is the max I try to do. So wait a minute, this is not the change. This one here, here we go. So for the file entry, I'm no longer keeping track of the state in the file entry, and I'm no longer running set rename. Ah, okay. Here's where set renaming is being used. What is this for? Oh, this is to clear it? What the heck is this for? This is on the rename box, the rename file function, renames the file, and then turns off renaming. Ah, right, because renaming is like a mode. So from within the file entry needs to tell the file manager, I'm done with renaming. I'm happy with this name, you know? I've already told the file system to rename it. Right, okay. So that's the only difference here. I went from it being a Boolean to this string because now we use the name of it so that other parts of the step process can know, oh, this is my file, this is me. versus it just being a Boolean. It's like, who's renaming, you know? Now we needed that name. Why is it complaining about this? Okay, this is the next thing I have to update. Right, so now in the file entry, I pass in the renaming state and that. And what is the renaming set as? Where is renaming going here? What the heck am I doing with that? Oh, okay, I already had renaming before, right. But before it was internally kept. Now it's externally kept, right. And now they're just being passed. So that was pretty simple. I pretty much just moved the state from here into here, honestly, is all that change was. And now let's just finish off the passing of it into this and see. This is the final piece of the 4-piece puzzle. What's this? This is use file context menu. Right, because the folder context menu can make new files, and then they need to be in rename mode. And then the file context menu can also put things in rename mode because you can right-click a file and say rename it. So what have I changed here? Now I pass set renaming in there as well. Oh wait, that was always the case. Right, now it's not a Boolean anymore, now it's a string. And now instead of saying true, you're in rename mode. Now I say that I pass in the base name of like just the file, not the directory, to say this is the file I'm renaming. Okay, so let's try that out. So like before, renaming a file should still work. Let's refresh here, open up this. So if I right click this and I say rename, that works. And I say favicons and I press enter, rename mode was finished. I close this, open this, still says favicons. So now the new test is if I make a new file or a new folder, it should instantly jump into rename mode. So I go new folder, there we go. Meow. New file, woof. Nice. And they worked the way I wanted to still, where the rename mode didn't rename the extension by default. It didn't select it. So that's a nice little touch. Let's go back to the code and call that one complete. Allow renaming on creation of file or folder. By basically moving the state up and then updating how the state has changed from being a Boolean to being a string, so you could specify the file in different places based on knowing the file name, which we happen to know. Ha ha ha. Okay, that one's done. That was this one here. Now let's go to fix shortcut renaming. Something's broken about shortcut renaming. What have I done? Oh, is this... Wait, what did I do here? Path. Oh, I messed up this. Darn it. What did I mess up here? Ah, I see. Right. So this is the one case where I was saying join was like helpful. That's why I'm worried. It's like, oh no, was it not helpful? It was still helpful. So if you remember before, I had some more logic after directory to decide whether a slash should be used. That we've removed. But this piece here, I should not have broken into 2 pieces. That was supposed to be the file name, and it should not be 2 pieces of a path. So instead of being name and then this, it should just be name plus that. Yeah, the directory and then the file name in this case. That was my mistake there. So I guess if I were renaming shortcuts, it wouldn't have worked with my old method. I'm not even going to test it. Let's just test that renaming shortcuts still works, or works now, because we never really saw that it was broken. So let's say Linux is Phoenix. There we go. It still worked. We never saw the .lnk shortcut extension, but it's obviously still working because the icon's still there. If I double click it, it still goes to the correct location. Okie dokie. That was a simple one. Hopefully a lot of these are like that, because I'm in a mood for simple fixes. I know a few of them aren't, but I have my copy paste foo is strong today. So, but it's so darn hot, man. I feel a little less terrible though, so it's not as hot as I think it was earlier. Maybe it's getting colder at night. You'd hope. Next one is a cool one. Next one is uploading files. So if you guys remember, like if we go here, if I can right click and I can press download, and that is, you see it downloads. It's just an empty text file. I'll double check it in Windows. Yeah, I can confirm it is indeed an empty text file. But what we want to have, I mean, we actually already have drag and drop too. So like I can rename it to dog.txt, and I can drag it on from my Windows desktop onto the browser and press and drop it, and here you go. There it is there. But what I'd like to be able to do is also right click and press upload, because I think that might be easier for people on mobile, whereas they can like hold down to get the context menu and then press upload, and then it'll pop up their file menu. Versus, I don't know how they could drag something on. So we need that upload button. Also for accessibility people, it might be helpful. Just in general, you need to have that option. I don't know if calling it upload makes sense, though, to be honest, because you're not actually uploading. You're just putting it in the local storage on your browser. You're not sending it to me or to a server at all. That's why it's like instant, you know? You can put it like 2 gigabytes on there, just like 10 seconds. Depending on how fast your computer is, obviously. I was thinking of calling it add file. I might call it add file. What's this one called? Download. It's just called download. I can't just call it add. I could say add file. I mean, you can't add a folder, so maybe I should say add file. Let's think about that as we do it. So, looks like a hefty commit here. Yeah, I changed some stuff. We're going to copy paste here. How many files changed in all this? 7 files. Okay. So it looks like I've made a new component called file input. That makes sense. Let's start with that. So in the file manager, let's close everything that's in my way, which is everything. Components, system, files, file manager. I'm going to make a new file called, what the heck was it called? File input.tsx. Was it a TSX? Yes, it was. TSX meaning it's a TypeScript file that has JSX inside it. So let's just, oops, that's just the file name. So I had the file name in my clipboard, darn it. Here we go, here's the file. Minus that repo stuff. Let's look at this first one and just see what this is, because let's just see if we can understand this out of context. This is a file input component. Ah, yes. So I'll explain. The way that the mechanism that I'm using to make it work, I couldn't find one specific JavaScript command where you just run that and it just pops up a dialog. Couldn't really find it. But what I was able to find was essentially that what you can do is you can make an input element, and if that input element is on the DOM and then you click it, and it's a file input element of type file, essentially that'll trigger it to open it. And that seems to be the recommended way to do it. So whatever. So I've decided I'm going to make a file input component and embed that in my file system context as almost like this piece is critical to the file system because this allows uploads in this way, this triggering of uploads. So I'm going to have this component essentially always as part of the file system context that gets loaded right away. And I'll do that by this. I have this thing called this context factory that I made, this generic component for making context where you can pass in a child element. And that's essentially, I'm going to do the same thing that I've done before because it makes the code look a lot simpler, I think, but we'll see. So the element itself is pretty simple. It just returns, it's a styled component. Let's look at what the styled component is quickly too, because I don't think it's super complex, but where the heck did I put it? Where is it actually? What the heck? It's new, isn't it? Oh no, I'm just blind. It's actually right here, duh. So that's how small it is. It's just a styled component with an input, and all it says is display none. I don't want it to ever show. It never needs to show. Here we specify that it's type file. Actually, you can do another cool thing. I don't even have to do this. I almost shouldn't, because I really like doing with styled components this little attrs thing. I'm just going to do the exact same thing here, because it's cool. So with styled components, you can also specify attributes at the start, and I actually did that with this other type. So I'll just say here, type is file, and we'll copy over that display none. I'm just taking this from a previous one that I used. Don't care about spell check. And it was called this. There we go. And now we don't need that even. There. So the styled file component from styled components, I'm setting the input attribute as type as file, and visually it's display none. And then here I'm using a ref so that I can refer to it here after the DOM has loaded. I can say if it's up and ready, then set the file input element as this. This is the file input. This is how you'll get to the file input basically. And I set this on the use file system context. So it has the little piece, little getter and setter dispatch command, just to pass this along, just so that the file system has access to this global input element that anytime you click it, the user is going to be prompted. That's the first piece of the puzzle. And we've just improved it, like I said, by moving the attributes there. What's the next piece of the puzzle? So in the file manager, it looks like I've added a function. Oh, a hefty one. So this is the meat and potatoes of it. Let's skip this for now and just do the builder parts. Ah, okay. What did I do here? Ah, right. So remember how I said there's the way to do it right now is to drop it in, and then when you drop it in, it uploads. So in my use file drop hook, that's currently where I have most of the logic that I care about. Like currently, the stuff that I just chopped out of this, this is basically a very generic function for taking a file, a DOM file element, and just uploading it to my file system. So this was very easy to just copy and paste onto this. And I think they're very similar. Let's try to see the differences. We'll do a compare in a minute, actually. But that's the basics here. I think for the most part, I just took the file system upload logic out of the file drop, where the only place it could upload, and I moved it into the generic file manager functions and called it handle file input event, where you get the event, which can be a drag event or just a generic event, and it can take a callback where it gets where you give it the file name and the file buffer is what's returned in the callback, I believe. Yeah. So you get the file name and the buffer by doing that, and then that can be moved along to the file system, which we'll see what I did that with. Whereas here, I think I was using the file system directly. Was I? No, I guess not. Yeah, this command was very similar. On drop, we had the drop event where it would stop anything default that was happening. It would check that there's some files to work with, get them, and then go through them. And then for each one, it would load it and convert it into a buffer. And here it was using new path, and it was actually going right to making the file system file. But because we wanted to use new path, I think we had to pass that in, or it had to be a hook. Something about this had to be a hook, I think. Darned if I recall what, though. This doesn't actually look like it needs to be a hook, honestly. What about this as a hook here? Let's take a peek at, well, let's get to this in a second. These two files I want to look at in a second. Let's just change use folder. I'm going to start changing files, and then we're just going to figure out what's changed versus trying to look at the GitHub diff, because the GitHub diffs are not always ideal to me. I prefer the side-by-side of VS Code. I mean, you can get a side-by-side with GitHub, but it's not the same as the VS Code one. So here's for use folder. What's the next thing I changed? In the folder actions, right, I've added this function called upload to folder that triggers that upload for the user. And in the file system, I've added this command called upload, this function called upload file. And that's all upload folder does. Upload to folder just runs the upload file command with the new path command. Interesting. Well, at least it's a simple change. I'm not sure I understand it yet, but let's see. There's a few more files to change here before I can see the grand picture of what I did here. We're kind of doing it out of order, so it's a little trickier to get, but that's part of the mystery, right? Let's see what this one's got for us. The use folder context, right? So I'm passing along this upload to folder command. This is the command I need to kind of trigger it, and this command has embedded in it, because of the use folder hook, I've embedded the file system upload file command that takes the new path, and the new path is specific to, where's new path coming from again? Yeah, new path is this function that I created. Where is it here? Yeah, here. So this one is very hard-coded to that specific directory, right? So this upload file command, yeah, it's actually clever the way I've done it here. It's like this for a few commands. Like new path, you can just instantly run it, and it puts a new path where you'd expect it to be. Same thing here. So here you just click upload to folder, and it's going to show the user the upload dialog, and it's going to write it to the right place based on the new path function. So that's another simple looking change. This one was a simple change. We need to see how the file system works, and I'm pretty sure it's just going to utilize those generic functions that we were talking about that we moved. Let's see. Here's the file system part. Right, this is where I added that file input as the child to the context factory. Let's just find that here. File system / index. Yes, this is it here. So you see here the change. Let's take a look at the diff, because that makes it easier to see. Yeah, so I've just added an additional parameter at the end of the context factory, where you can add a functional component. And I'm just saying here, I want the file input component to be loaded in there. And that, by the context factory, that gets put in as one of the children inside the context provider. It's just a way for me to pass things into the context that are kind of global. I'm also using this for the context menu as well. We see here menu. This is another one where I'm using a menu that gets put in once and then used multiple times by the context itself. So it's kind of like a context-specific component that is along for the ride, so to speak. If I want to try to simplify to the point of confusion, which I just did. Now let's go to the context, the file system context. And here's where we do our biggest change. Let's take a peek at what we changed. So we haven't added that function yet. Oh, sorry guys. Let me switch to the code. There we go. So this is the use file system context hook. It's one of the last files we're going to change before we do that moving of the code. For this one here, I've added that set file input. Right, that's being used. Where's that being used? That's being used here when the input element first gets triggered. You get that reference, so the file system knows about it. So this is it exposing that so that it can be set. And then here's that upload file command that gets that callback that has the name and the buffer. I should just say buffer. It's implied that it's the file. Just like name just says name, it doesn't say file name. In this case, at least it works. So here we got that file input and set file input, okay, and then file input will be the element. So here's the meat and potatoes of that upload command, where it takes in that callback. The callback, as you remember, is the new path command. Maybe that's how the new path command works or looks. Let's go to that new path command. Where is it here? Here it is. Okay, yeah, I'm actually doing the same silliness where I say buffer like that. Let's just make it simple here too. Consistent. There we go. We know what that is. So yeah, the new path command is more like that. Wonder if there's any other places where I'm doing that. Oh man, all over the place. All over the place where I had to redefine buffer. I don't like that I had to define it this many times. But let's just make that more consistent, even though that's a change, a big change. It's not that big a change, but... Okay, let's continue looking at what upload file does. So, assuming there's an input, right, assuming that the input's been set and someone's run the upload file command, what we do is we make an input listener. Okay, here's where I define the type for it. File input, remove event listener. So it removes itself, assuming there's already a change listener on there. Now this may or may not be successful, but that's okay. I think this is in case that this gets triggered more. Oh wait, so this will get triggered multiple times. Let's try to understand this. Oh right, okay. So we have this file input DOM element that's always there in the root, but I only care to put an event listener on it right when the user is about to do something. So I make this event listener command here. That's the command. So here's where I add it. I say whenever there's a change to file input, run this input listener, and then I click the file input. And then what it does is it runs the input listener and it removes itself right away, and then it handles the file input. That's that input that gets triggered. So here's where it passes in the event and it takes that callback that we know is the new path command. In this case. And that's that. That's the basics of that. So now let's move those two pieces of code so we can utilize this. And we'll take a look at it. So let's remove stuff from file drop. And you'll see we've simplified file drop immensely to the point of absurdity almost. It's funny because I already did changes to it. Oh right, I changed buffer here. Okay, well we don't have to worry about that anymore. So if you see what file drop looks like now, oh, I actually still had buffer there. Let's put that back. There we go. So see, here's file drop now. It's become a lot smaller. We'll save this and let's look at the difference. Basically remove the whole thing. So we don't have that little halt event thing. All of this logic to handle a file being uploaded, that's been moved. And now all it does is it focuses on the return. And the return command is extremely simple. On drag over, you halt the event. And the halt event is part of functions now too. That's a generic to say prevent default and stop propagation. And then in the on drop event, all it does now is just pass along that event. Just like it's doing in that other place here, where it's running handle file input and it's taking the event that got triggered from the file input being clicked. Here now it's doing that here, where it's just taking the event that was the drop event and saying use new path, which I think was happening here too. It says Yeah, here it just says use callback. And then, so upload file, you can do pass new path too. Or in the case of file drop, I already had access to new path. Does that make sense? Yeah, that makes sense to me. Seems slightly confusing, but when you look at it, it's actually a lot less code. I've actually simplified the code a bit. And now let's see. So yeah, in comparison, pretty much nothing changed here at all, except that now I run a callback instead of running new path directly. Because the file system doesn't have direct access to that new path. New path is very specific to the folder. So upload file just passes the function that's going to handle making a new path. It just says, you know, give me what I need and I'll do it. Okay, so wait a minute here. How did this file keep coming back? So this is buffer now. Yes, there. Wait. Yeah. Cool. The last piece is this piece here. I have to go into this function, overwrite that, and then let's take a look at what we overwrit here. Functions. Here we go. So this is, yeah, just I added that handle file input event. And here it takes the event, can be that triggering event of it, which is generic enough. There is something to this, but if I tried to make it less generic, I was fighting with TypeScript. Or a drag event, that I can be more clear on. Again, we make this buffer. I don't know how many times I had to change this. There we go. And otherwise it didn't change. We've done the instance of. The callback gets triggered with the file name and the buffer. Great. Let's test it out and see if that worked. Go back into the browser here. Where were we here in this list too? Allow renaming on creation of file. Yeah, fix shortcut, right. It was called upload files. It's just to orient myself here. And we just did functions. We removed the stuff from file drop. That was all of them. So let's refresh this. So now if I right click, you see here I have that upload. That got added from the use folder context. I added upload here. The triggers uploaded folder. And when I right click and I press upload, you guys can't see it, but I do indeed have a file upload dialog now. So I can say, hey, let's upload this window image. And I press open. And there we go. There it is right there. It had the same effect. And now, because we're using the same logic that the file drop was using, we also get that iteration. So watch, if I upload the same thing again, it did not work. Why is that? Upload. I was expecting the name to iterate. Oh, maybe that's another step I do. I think that's in the next step. Right, so now probably it's broken for drag and drop too. Let me check. If I drag in, oh no, it works. Dog1. That's what I wanted, but I was expecting that to happen here. What if I do upload and I upload that dog one? Okay, dog2, dog3. Whoa, why'd I get a bunch there? Okay, now Window's working too. It's like it was stuck or something. I don't know. That's weird. That's a weird behavior. Now if I upload and do window again, window 2. Okay. So now it's working. Either drag or by manually uploading. It works. You can upload stuff. Although we decided to call it add, didn't we? Maybe here I should say add too. I should probably use the word add because it's really not upload. Nothing's being uploaded. Add to folder. And we'll just call this add file. Yeah, I think that just makes more sense. I don't want people to get thinking that it's upload, honestly, because it's really not. Where else here? Upload file. We're going to call that add file. Call this add file. Did anything else here need to be the word upload? No. A lot of places to change this. Add file. I think add file makes more sense though. I like the way that sounds. Nice, that's a one-liner now. It's always good. It's always good when making something smaller in name. Simplifies it and makes the line smaller. Add, oops, okay. Add to folder. Add file. And now alphabetically, this should probably be over there. Like that. Yep, buffer. Here buffer had to change. Oh, no, wait. Yeah, there buffer changed. A few places buffer had to change. Okay. Add file. to folder, add to folder, add file, new path. That looks clean. Although it looked okay as upload too. Where we have left here? There's straightforward. Here, I don't think we use the word upload too much. Handle file input. Yeah, that's more generic. And here as well, we didn't really use it. So let's just make sure I didn't break it. Just save all. Refresh this page. Let's clear all the cache too. Clear the storage. Refresh again. And let's try this dog. So I'm going to drag on dog. There we go. Drag it on again. Number 1. Now I'm going to do right click, add file. Click it again. Now we get 2. I'm going to do add file. I'm going to pick Windows. That works. Yeah. I'm going to, where's that window? I'm going to drag on the window and then we get number 1. I'm going to refresh and it's all still working, it looks like. Okay. So I think that works now. And I think now we have the ability to add file. I wonder if I should say add a file. Add a file. Probably more correct English. Add a file? See how that looks. Add a file. I'll keep it as add a file for now, but I need to find if there's a better way to word that. A Microsoft-y way or something, or Windows way. Because we're still trying to copy Windows whenever possible. Yeah, add file. I can't think of anything better than that. Append file. That doesn't seem right. Not appending to anything. And it's not upload. Store file. We'll just say add a file. Add file. I don't like that in there. File. Let's add to folder. No, add file to folder maybe? Add file to folder. Let's just leave it as add file for now, but I'm not happy about it, guys. I am not happy about this. I wanted to have a better name in my head for it. Upload files to the moon. Okay, that was a good one. What's next? Store selected icons in session. What does that mean? Oh, right. This is an interesting one. So this is part of a bigger process that I'm working on about having the ability to select icons. Let's go to the first change here. This is the file manager index. File manager index. And let's just see, what did I change? What have I changed this time? So I've added session to the file manager because I want to get some stuff from the session. I want to be able to blur an entry, focus an entry, and to have a list of focused entries. And basically the idea behind this is, let's jump to the browser. So, oh man, but I just changed it. Okay, let's undo my changes so that it's not broken so I can see what it looked like before. Okay, so you see the icon there. When you click it, how it's like selected now, even though I'm not selecting it, and I click off, it blurs. I click this one. So currently there's only the ability to click one at a time. And holding control doesn't help, even though in Windows it does. That is the first thing I want to fix. So I want to have it stored in the session instead of stored on a per icon basis to say I'm selected. I need a little more specific than that, basically. So the first step to that was this change. Let's take a peek at what this first change is. So like I said, I'm going to store these things in the session now. The ability to blur it, to focus one, and to list what's focused. I'm not married to this, but I'm using a little bit of class names, even though I'm using styled components. I use the occasional class. This is partly because in the styled component, I had a bunch of logic for the pseudo selector of focus within, and I've just changed that to a class selector very simply. So the logic for it is that if the focused entry includes that file, then add the focus within class. And I've also added some blur and focus logic to the icon, where if you on blur of it, on clicking away, you actually clear all icons. Any kind of blurring of icons resets them all. Same with Windows. If you select 7 icons and you click somewhere else, all 7 are reset. So that's the idea here, is go through all the focused entries, and for each focused entry, blur it. And if you click it, then that is considered just a focus entry. Now, that's pretty basic for now. I can't remember if this commit, I do expand on this, but I'm going to go on the commits just like you guys. Let me just check here ahead. I think I make it more advanced, but we'll see. That's the basics of this file anyways. That was a simple change. Before, it didn't have any of that really, so that was complete addition, that one. You see here's where I changed it. So before it was a pseudo selector where it's called focused within, and the CSS has the ability to know if you've clicked within the elements within it. But I'm gonna handle that logic myself by changing this to a actual class that I apply. So instead of CSS saying, I know this is focused within, I'm gonna say, you know what, actually, I'll just use a class that I'm gonna give the exact same name, which maybe is confusing. I don't know. Probably it is to someone. Someone might look at that and think, oh, that's the pseudo selector. I don't care for now. So the only other piece that I needed actually to make this work was the session piece, was just adding that logic to the session. So let's just do that. Go to the use session context, and we'll just add that. And let's see how that looks. So like we showed, we exported blur entry, focus entry, and a list of focused entries. And it's just a list of strings. And blurring will take the list and take the current list and will filter out that entry from the list and just give you the list without that. And focusing will add to the list. It won't say, okay, now it's just that item. It can do multiples. But we don't currently have the ability to select multiples, I believe. Okay, so let's test that out and let's just see if it still works. So refresh this. So if I click, there we go. It still acts like focused. I blur, it unblurs. So there we go. So now we can have two. But if I click control, it still doesn't do that yet. I still don't really have, I have the ability to multi-select, but I don't have the means to do it at this point. We'll get to that though. First, let's commit this. It's a simple one. We're going to call it store selected icons in session. And let's just, where were they being stored before? Right, pretty much before they were only being stored in theory in the CSS realm via this pseudo selector. So this pseudo selector was the only thing that knew about it. And basically I've added some JavaScript now to change the logic to be class-based and to use the JavaScript blur and focus and to do the logic myself of keeping track what's focused so that I can have more than one. Because focus within only works on one thing. But if I click one and then I click another, the other thing focuses within, but I want the ability to intervene there and say, logically, the thing you clicked is okay. So now I want two things to be selected. That's the idea. Anyways, let's move on to that. Let's commit this one, and I don't know if it's the next commit, but we'll get to it anyways. What's the next commit? The next commit is this week. I reverted that twitchy one. We don't care about that. Use hook for double timer. Double click timer. Why did I do this again? This is involving double click and some mistakes that I seem to have made here. Right, I think I had double click as a function, thinking that that would work, but under certain circumstances, the input ref was getting reset and double click was no longer working. I think that the current conditions aren't that way. I think it was one of those things that I reverted, actually. I think it was this, the twitchy peak behavior or the min-max thing or something, where it made it obvious to me that this double-click hook is not ideal. Because if you see here before, I had the timer was just being set once, but then the next loop, I was checking the timer. But it was remaking double-click function every time, so this was never being stored, that information. Whereas now, I've switched the timer to be a ref. I think that's pretty much the only difference I did. And it's part of this callback now, I think. Yeah, it's just now an on click here. Whereas before I was directly exporting the function. I moved it to an on click event and returned it here as a piece of it so that it can be, now that it's like object on click, I can just do spread notation to just dump it into an element as an on click handler. So let's make this. I think there's a commit where I actually moved this file. I'm just going to move it directly to the right place this time. And that right place is in the utils. Because currently double-click is here. Here's double-click right now. But I'm going to make a new util function called useDoubleClick.ts, and we'll just paste it in here. And it's pretty much in theory exactly the same as this function. If you look at the two side by side. It's doing all the same stuff down here and here. It's just that now it's being handled as a ref. So that is a little bit better in the React world, especially with the logic I was using. And at one point it was that way. And I think I changed it because I was like, why does it need to be a ref? And I think in some cases it didn't need to be, but I wanted to use a component a certain way that made it necessary. And I didn't want that to be a hindrance. So I think this is just a useful change. So I took double click out of there. This automatically will have happened, I bet. Let's check. It should have. If I took it out of here, it should have also... Yeah, I'd removed them there. I can see there's been a change. So this part's done too. There's two places where we need to update it, basically. Let's update it in the simple place first, which is the file entry index. That's where, because on file entries, I have double click, as you may expect. So for that one, I'm now importing the hook, which I need to change this to be utils. There we go. I import the hook, and I'm just using the hook pretty much like how I was using before. So before I was saying on click, do a double click. Now I'm just dumping it on here like I dumped the other ones in. I much prefer that technique. Otherwise, this function didn't change at all. And then this one is slightly more substantive. This change has a tiny bit more. This is the title bar index. Title bar / index. Change that, and let's just see. What the heck did I change there? The title bar also, you can double click the title bar to maximize, and you can double click the icon to close. Again, let me fix this import. I've decided utils here. So here, instead of before here, I had the two functions like this. I had on click and doing some disable logic here for whether to show it on maximize. And I had another one here where I was doing on click. Now I was able to just do them here, where I do two different use double clicks, an on close and an on maximize. And then here I was able to just attach it. I decided to still use on click here. Why did I do that actually? I guess it's okay to do that. But what I could also do is just directly call these. I could just call this on click close and on click maximize. And I could dump them in like I do to the other stuff. On click close and on click maximize would be, where did it go? Here. In this case, it kind of does need to be like that actually. And that's why I did it for the other one too, probably. I could do another one that's kind of wonky, I bet. What if I do like this? ... brackets. Disable maximize. If it's disabled, then you just give me an empty object. Otherwise, give me that on click maximize. There we go. I think in theory that's legible. So if disable maximize, maybe I should make it the first condition. If not disable maximize, then on click maximize. Otherwise, just empty. Okay, I kind of like those. Let's test it out. So I'll refresh this. So does double clicking still work? Dup. Yep, that opened. And if I double click here, that maximized, minimized, and double clicking here closes. Cool. So I didn't break double click, and now I've turned it into a hook, which works a little bit better in certain conditions where I'm using a component that has double click. What's the message here for it? Use hook for double click. Okay, use hook for double click. Let me just quickly double check my double click changes. Yeah, I'm happy with those. What's next on the list? Focusable entries, right. I think this is where I was saying I wanted to have multiples. Let's see if it is. I think so. There's a lot of logic here. Yeah, so I've made a hook called use focusable entries, and I've simplified this. First, let's see what I've simplified here. This is where I just added the focusable entries on the file manager. So I've removed some of this and put it into a hook, basically. Instead of having the class name setting, the on blur and on focus. Now I just have this dot 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 focusable entry, and you pass in the file. So this adds it to each of the file entries, all that stuff you need. I've also decided to I also need a reference to the style file manager so that I can know if it's been blurred onto an entry or if it's blurred into the manager. I think. No, so I can... there's some reason why I need this. So I need to know about the containing file manager, which I pass on to the use focusable entries hook. Okay. Otherwise I no longer needed session too, because that's also going to be part of this hook. So there's just this very simple hook called use focusable entries. Here's the file manager reference to the element that holds the entries. And then here's the use focusable entry command that you want to run on attached to every element to add the right click handlers and the right class handling. So that simplified that, and now we've moved the logic into this use focusable entries. So let's make that. I think that's in the file manager folder. .ts. And I'm just going to copy what I have here and paste it in, and we're going to look through it. So we know it exports the same thing that we removed here. The class name, the on blur, and the on focus. So that's all I've specified here in the type. And then here for the focusable entry function, it takes a file and it returns those props, as we know, as we expect. And now we pass in that file manager. That's for handling the blur, I believe. Yeah. Right. So if it's when it blurs, if it's been blurred on something that has no focus target, like let's say you click on inside a window or you click the taskbar, I mean, in those cases, it will have a focus target. But let's say you click something that doesn't. You might get null here. In that case, blur everything. And then in the case, if you click on something, if the thing you clicked on is in the file manager, is not in the file manager. Okay. So basically what it's saying here is is blur in all cases unless you've clicked an element that's inside the file manager itself. And the only elements inside the file manager are the file entries. So basically it's saying if you click a file entry, I want you to defer the blurring or focusing logic to the file entry itself. So that's how we handle it here. And then here's where the click logic happens. So okay, you click the file entry, and that also triggers blur. So if you clicked one file entry and then you click another one, that would trigger the blur. But then the blur knows, oh, okay, you clicked the file entry. Okay, I'll let the onClick over there handle it. Now, what the onClick is doing is it looks in the event for this thing called control key. That's basically to know if you've held down control. That's a native event handler piece. So I'm using that to handle whether or not I want to select multiple. That's how it's done in Windows. So that won't change. What I do here is I say if the control key is clicked, we're going to do one kind of logic. If it's not clicked, what we're going to do is we're going to unfocus everything else and focus what you clicked, basically. So we'll treat it as like a single selection mode. If control's clicked, it's like multi-select mode. And in that case, if the entry is already focused and you click and you held control, then you want to treat it as a blur. You want to treat it as unselecting. Otherwise, treat it as selecting. That's it. That's the logic, basically. Let's check it out. So we go into here, we refresh. So I click one, that's still working. Click one, blur. So if I click one and I hold control, there we go. Now we got three. And I click off, all three of them blurred off. I can click, let's do that again. Click on all three, and then let's hold control and click the middle one. There we go. Now the middle one unblurred. And I click off, now they both unblur. There we go. So that's more like how I wanted it to be and how Windows is. That multi-selection of focusable items. So I'm going to call this commit. I'll call it multi-focus entries. There we go. Multi-focus entries. Multi-focus entries. Multi. We're at 1 hour 20. A little less active today. On my part and on the chat part, but I'm fine with that. Where are we here? Next one up, transition to initial dream max close. Right. So I think the issue here is if I maximized here and I close, you'll see it kind of goes to the top left. You see it kind of went to the top left. I would rather it act as if it's shrinking back. I want it to be like you see here when I unmaximize where it's like that. I want that to be happening as it's closing, basically. That it's just more smooth that way. If you see this one here, it's kind of weird. It's like going off in the corner there because it never really unmaximized. It just started to close, and close has a transition where it completely shrinks. But if you unmaximize, it also will try to go back to the original position, which is what I wanted. It's pretty simple, I believe, the change. Let's just paste it in because I don't want to screw it up. It's in the use window transitions hook. And I believe we just added one condition or something. So I'm also checking now for closing within the process. That's a Boolean to know if it's being closed. And all I did here is added one little piece of logic. Before I was saying if the Boolean is maximized, then it's maximized. Now what I say is if it's not closing and it's maximized, then it's maximized. Otherwise, it's going to go back to active, which will shrink it back to the default. So now let's try. Now if we open the window and we maximize it, now when I close, there you go. You see, as it was closing, it went inwards. That's preferable to me. And I think it's a little more Windowsy, but at the same time, Windows kind of does a jank. So I'm not always going to copy Windows. Only improvement upon, is my idea. If they're doing it good, I'll copy what they're doing. Otherwise, I'll improve upon it. What's next? Hide peak on taskbar entry click. What is this? Oh, there's so many peak ones I did. Oh, we're actually kind of at the tail end. There's only this many commits left. So hide peak. What is this supposed to do? I added a function called hide peak. So when you click peak, right. So if we open this here and I hover, you see peak is shown. If I click it, it does this like, and stays open. I don't want that. With Windows, when you click it, it hides. It goes away. It goes away until you move the mouse back out and then back in. Now, peak is a little buggy, so we're going to have to fix this a few times. I think we're going to... This change, I think, is like one change among a few that we have to do. Let's just jump into it, though. So we have a hook here called use window peak that handles the peak logic, some of it. So we've added an export of the hide peak function, and all that hide peak does is just set show peak to false. Same thing that on mouse leaves does, but just specific to just getting rid of peak. Oh, sorry guys, I didn't jump back to the code. Darn it. So I just did a copy paste to do a change. Did a minor change. Export hide peak function that just sets it to false, and then the actual exporting of it, not just the type. That was piece one, and there's only two pieces to this, I think, and the next piece is pretty simple. It's in the taskbar entry. That's where you'd expect it to be, I think. Oh, I switched when I should not have switched. Taskbar entry. There it is. Okay, should be a minor change, hopefully. Yeah, so wait, what am I doing here? Was I not even using this before? Oh, okay, I just moved it up, sorry. So before it was here and it was just peak and peak events, I've moved it up so that I could also have hide peak, which I needed to run in on click. So now when I click, it should actually hide. Let's try it out. Refresh, open up. So I hover and then I click. There we go, and it hides. And it doesn't come back. I move out, I move back in, there it's back. I click, it hides. Okay. That's what we want. So that was that piece. Hide peak on taskbar entry click. Dunarino on that one. And now we only have 2 days of changes left. So refactor peak to be less buggy. This is like attempt number 2. This was a bigger change. I think what it just basically does is I kind of remove stuff and cut it out. Oh man, yeah, this has been changed to being... Oh wait. There was a hook called use window peak. Oh right, it's no longer a TSX. Now it's just a TS file because I no longer am loading this component in here. Where was the component being used? Here, I had a component here, and it was unnecessary to make it here and then just pass it along. I want to just make it use it a step sooner. So here I'm using peak window instead of peak component, and I'm just importing it now, as opposed to that intermediate step where I was making it. And here I had the use window peak hook where I had peak component. I actually didn't need that at all, I guess. What happened here? Yeah, I didn't really need that. I was just kind of, it's just about whether or not it's visible. Wait a minute here. Okay. I don't know if I simplify this later. I guess this is simple enough for now. Basically, this is all it's doing. So I've really simplified the peak logic to be, this is just the when to show. Because then I don't need to export hide peak either. Here's where it needs to be. So it's either, I've just moved the state logic to here. For is peak visible or set it. Hide or show. If you click it, hide it. If you mouse over it, show it. If you mouse off of it, hide it. That simplifies that. And then here, peak window, I just pass the ID. And I use is peak visible here instead of checking for the component. Okay. So that didn't have to change too much from a simplification point of view. This file is completely gone now, though. I've moved it to here. We need to compare this because I don't know what I've changed. Let's compare this right now. This is the new one, which is called use window peak TS. We can just keep them side by side because they actually have different names, even though they should be almost identical. Use window peak.ts. There we go. And we'll just compare the two here. Compare. So what changed? What changed? Oh, a hefty amount changed, I'm sorry to say. Why did so much change here? I mean, this part I understand because I no longer, now I'm handling those events somewhere else. So all I need to return now, let's invert this comparison. I want to see the new and the old, not the old and the new. There we go. This is the old. So the old one was exporting all those events. Now we don't need to do any of that. Let's ignore render changes for a second and just see what did we change with that hook. We still have the window peak hook, but now we do it within the peak view instead of doing it within the hook and then passing a component. As far as what changed, I think we simplified it a lot here. It was always, yeah, before it was getting these two things. Before it needed to know about closing. Now it doesn't seem to know about closing here. We've split up the timers too. So the mouse timer is, there is no mouse timer anymore. Right, I didn't need a mouse timer. So before I had a timer to hover over it to know how long till it would load. I think, and then, because then there was like a render delay. I think it was an unnecessary amount of timers, perhaps. Yeah, this is a bigger change, so it's a little harder to grasp myself. Yeah, the hide, a lot of this logic was removed because it was moved up to the, it was all about the hide show part rather than about actually working with the peak image. So show peak, hide peak, the mouse timer, those things are moved now. The preview timer is the only timer left, which was running here and doing render, but now we just only need a render function once. So we just pass it in here. So at this point, set peak would be not true. Oh no, that's not handled here now. That's handled in the taskbar. Right. I mean, you can see it's a lot simpler. It's mostly just red now. Yeah, I didn't have the mouse leave logic. Yeah, that whole mouse timer was useless. Basically, I got rid of the mouse timer. I moved the hide show peak logic and the mouse in and out and click logic to the taskbar entry. And that's essentially the basics of that. And then the render frame I've changed slightly, it looks like. Here I think this was because the canvas can sometimes have no height, or the canvas can be null, and I wasn't checking for that. Here I was assuming the canvas was there, and I was just I was trying to get the context on it and trying to get image data. Now I check if the height and width have to exist. That was a little safety check that I noticed. Otherwise, it's doing pretty much the same here. Same here. Yeah, nothing else has changed here, actually. It was just this. It was just wrapping it in this condition and checking for this. This is just a safety check. Okay, so actually not a lot changed there. Mostly just removing stuff. But it looks scary. And now it's not a TSX file because now the components are loaded directly within here. Although I haven't done that change yet. Let's do that right now. We just did this change. Wait a minute. Didn't I do that change? What was I just looking at here? This is the taskbar entry. I have not done that change yet. Let's do that change. Where's the taskbar entry? Here it is. Yeah, we looked at this and talked about it. Yeah, so I deleted this file and I updated that file. We just finished comparing it. I want to change this file that is the main reference to it and where we moved a good chunk of its logic. That was this taskbar entry here. We'll just once again go over this just to make sure that that was good. Got a message here from Satwik Gosh. Excited to see a clone of Windows using React. Cool, I'm happy you like it. And it sounds like the first time you've seen this, so I'm happy because I got lots of videos and lots of content, and I'm gonna keep working on this. So I'm hoping this will be one of the better ones. You know, I'm taking as much pride in it as I can. It's not just a one-off clone type of thing for me. This is a big project. So thanks for joining. Happy to see you. Happy to hear feedback. So we just discussed these changes here, where we moved the hide show logic and the click mouse enter leave logic into the taskbar entry. We've got a peek window component now instead of the peek component. And it doesn't seem to be, oh right, it doesn't know about this ID because we need to update that component now. So we've done this part too. And this is the only other piece, is just updating peek window. So I think we move, oh man, even peek window is pretty simple. They all look so simple when I open them there. They look so small. Peek window, here we go. Yeah, it's pretty simple. Let's see what changed about peek window. I think I just pass ID now. Oh, I no longer pass image now. So instead of passing image like I was doing, now I do the use window peek hook here, where I give it the ID and I say, just give me the image, instead of doing all that other stuff where it was giving hooks and stuff. So I've kind of split up the logic into a few places, because I think having that hook that gave me a component that was a functional component that I was reloading again, it was causing some real mess ups with framer motion, and it was causing some errors. So that's simple enough. And I've added some conditional logic here that if there's an image, show the component, otherwise show empty. And because I had that conditional logic, I had to get rid of having the hook here, and I have to call it up here a little bit, because you can't call a hook conditionally. Otherwise, that's it. Now, I don't have a good demo of it's being twitchy, but it was being really twitchy before. I mean, if it can just be more solid, I'll be happy. That looks more solid to me. It's very consistent, no console log errors. It's very smooth to open, I think. Yeah, I'm happy with that, so. Refactor peek to be less buggy. It involved those 4 files. Let me just, oops, sorry guys, jumping around on you here. Refactor peek to be less buggy. Nice. And we're going to keep working on peek. There's a lot to peek, actually. The more that I work on it, the more I realize, like, oh man, there's a lot here. I still have like 5 or 6 things on my board for peek that I need to add. A few bugs I've noticed, a few features missing. But it's coming along. It actually does a lot. I wasn't even going to do peek at one point until I realized it was there. I almost never used it, but then I was like, I want to copy Windows as close as possible. And now I see all these little things about it I didn't notice before. Focus window on click of peek. Right, this is a nice one. So when you click peek like this, let's say I'm unfocused because the window's not focused. I hover peek, I click it, it did not focus. But if I click the taskbar entry, it does focus. So I just want that same behavior for both. Is that too much to ask? And only 2 files need to change. We need to change peek window again a little bit. So let's start, let's start there. Peek window. We're going to do a paste change there, and let's just see what changed. So we've added session here to be able to set the foreground ID, because the peek window itself needs to be able to say what's foreground. We've added a click handler to the peek window, and we've also had to add a tab index. Why is that? I don't recall why that was. I think the reasoning behind that is that it needs to be, this entry that you click needs to be considered focusable, so that the window doesn't think that you're stealing focus from it. It needs to be focusable so that the window can compare it properly. Otherwise, when you click here, the item that gets clicked is not actually going to be something behind it, probably. Let's double check what that second change is. The second change is kind of relevant to it, I think. Is it? I think it is, but let's just finish looking at what this change was that I did. This was it. Yeah, I added the click handler, set the foreground, on click. If it's minimized, unminimize it. This is a toggle. And then whether it's minimized or not, set the foreground ID. That's part one. Now to make it so that the window doesn't lose focus, we need to go into the use focusable hook. And we need to add some logic right, where is it here? Right after the on blur capture, right here. So we checked the window to see, when a window gets blurred away, we say, okay, what did you click? Is it something that I'm connected to so I can stay focused? And in this case, it doesn't. So if any of these occur, then it says, no, it's not, clear it. But in this case, none of those will occur. So that's good because it's considered focused on taskbar peak. That's because of this part here where it says taskbar entry's previous siblings contains the focused element. The taskbar entry also contains the peak element. So this logic will work now that we have that tab index so that the element's focus is proper. So now it's actually the focused element instead of something else. But the reason we have to do this is because when you click down there, it's like, okay, foreground ID won't be reset, but now the DOM thinks you've clicked that other item. So I want, when you click there, I want focus to go back to the window, basically. That's why I say component window focus. So let's try it out. So now we open and we can test the blur logic. You see how it's a black bar. When you click away, it's gray. You click the item, it's black again. You click away, it's gray. Now when you hover here, and now when we click, there we go. Now it's, oh, I got an error here. I'm gonna ignore that for a second. We click here and then we click away. It worked, okay. Now as far as this error, this might be something that I fixed in a future commit. If we're still getting this at the end, I'd be distracted. Here, let's go to my show notes and say, is this error still happening? Question mark. And I'll just paste in a bit of it here. Can't perform a React state update on an unmounted blah blah blah. Blah blah blah. There we go. We'll just say that for now because I do feel like I might have ran into that and fixed it in my next commit. But otherwise it worked. Ignoring that error, we hover on peak, it appears, we click peak, and now it's focused. We click off, we see it unfocused, so it was focused. Let's ignore that error though for a second. Because this change in itself is pretty simple. I don't want to overcomplicate the commit with anything more than this change, even though it might be this change that caused the error. I'm not sure. Perhaps it is. But I'm happy with that change. So that worked. Focus window on click of peak. Let's commit that, add it to our notes, and see if we have any commits where we fixed the stuff that we just broke. Let's see if past Dustin helped present Dustin. So we just did this one. Oh, here we go. Fix peak rendering image without ongoing timer. Was that possibly causing the issue? Oh, I think it is. Yeah, I remember this. This was the issue. This is a cool one. Let's resolve this. This took me a while to find because it's the way that I did it was weird. Use window peak. I'm going to do the change and then explain why it worked. So basically for render frame, this is the render frame function. Let's ignore this for a second and just go to where window peak is. So window peak was doing render frame on the timer. So the timer would start and then every second it would try to render a frame. And I was passing in a React dispatch command called setImage. So when this function would trigger, it would go back up to React and say, update this thing. That was so that I could let render frame be outside of the hook and run like this where you pass in a dispatch command. Now, the trick to this was that when it was, so let's say it's running that, and then we had here, it was cleaning up the timer. So the timer's stopped, the element's gone, but the render frame command may have already ran because the render frame command in itself takes a little bit of time to run. So the element's gone, the timer's reset, but the render command just finishes and then it triggers setImage, but setImage is trying to run on a React component that's already gone. That's essentially, I think, what the error was getting at. So the solution that I've done here is twofold. I think this piece here is not really related. This is just me trying to be... No, this is related. This is related. So now what I do is I have to keep track of the preview, the timer, the actual timer going. so that when render frame gets to the point where it's about to set dispatch, it has to go check back with the timer and say, hey, timer, are you still going, basically? So when I clear the timer now, not only do I tell the window object to do clear timeout and stop the running timer, I also clear the reference element and make it undefined. And what that does is then and now in the render frame, I'm passing the preview timer ref. So when I go to render frame here, I have the preview timer ref now. Right at the last step, right when I go to set the thing, the callback here is that dispatch command from React. I check the type of the preview timer current and make sure it's not undefined, which we do here. So I say, have you cleared the timer? Is it undefined? I wonder if there's another way I could do that. I wonder if there's a way I could check a timer. Let's take a peek at that. Window.js check timer is running. Can I see if a timer is still running? There isn't any way to interact with the timer. See window timer. Oh, that's useless. Yeah, I don't know if there is. There's set and there's clear. But how do you know? Because when you set a timer, you get like an ID that you can use to clear it. But can you use that ID to see if it's running? Doesn't seem like you can. So until I figure out how to do that, here's my solution, has been to just check the reference to that ID and see, is it clear? Okay, so there is an ID still, then do the setting. And I pass the preview timer along because this is a recursive function. That's it, though. That's all I did to fix it. So, I mean, here's the error here. If I refresh, presumably we just won't see it anymore. Yeah, I unfocus, I hover, I click. I mean, I'm not creating it. I don't know if it gets created every time, but ideally it's not happening anymore. So that was the basics of fixing that. And that actually took a long time to find, that issue. So I'm proud of that fix. But it would be cool if you could just look up the timer, because then I wouldn't have to do all this ref passing or even resetting. Just, hey, if clear timer has been ran, then at the point of this callback here, then I can just go over to the window object and say, hey, is timer 732 still running? And it says no. I go, oh, okay. I won't render this frame, and then it's not going to render again because the timer's gone. But I don't know if there is such a method. I could keep track of it, perhaps, but at that point, I've already found a way to keep track of it. I don't need another mechanism to keep track of it. Some more convoluted way, or perhaps less convoluted. I don't know. What's next? Active and hover styling for peak. Right, this is a minor one. So if I hover over here, the item, you see here when this is hovered, the taskbar entry, that it's like kind of more light. And if it's selected, it's like, if it's unselected, it's like the same color as the taskbar. If you hover it, it's kind of gray. If you click it, it's like a little more gray. And if you click and hover, it's like even more bright gray. But this never changes. This little color around here does not. When you click it, it doesn't do anything. If you click this one, it has an active color. You see how it kind of, as I'm clicking it, it changes color a little bit. Basically, I want the same exact behavior from the peak window, because that's how it is in Windows, which is what I say all the time. So let's take a look here. Oops, what did I click? I clicked something weird. Styled peak window. And I'm just going to dump in my changes here, and we're going to take a peek at them. Take a peek at the peak changes. So quite simple, actually. Happy to say. So the background color I've switched to be background instead of hover. And the border color I've changed to something called peak border that I've set. Let's do that change first. Let's just set peak border, because that's an easy one. We'll go to the theme colors. And I think it was here within the taskbar, the peak border. There we go. And then the other change, so then I set peak border as the color. So that's just kind of tweaking the colors a little bit, I guess. Yeah, that was tweaking the colors a bit to be more consistent with the taskbar entry itself. And now what I've done here that I like doing with styled components is you can reference the parent component. So I can say the parent component that I've actually imported here, when it's hovered, then and I want to be then these things. So when you hover over the taskbar entry, I also want the background color of my peak window to change. And I want how it looks when it's active to change too. Let's try that out. So now when we hover over here, you can see that the color of the taskbar and the color of the peak window is the same. And if I hover off, you can even see for a split second, it actually, the peak windows color changes as well. And if I click here, I hover, now watch, when I click down, you see the active color changes. So you see when I click down, it actually changes. So that matches closer to how it is in Windows. Simple commit, I'm not going to dig too much deeper into that one. We'll just call that the active and hover styling for peak. And let's see what we have left. That was that day. So now this is all the stuff that I did. Just yesterday I did all this? Jeez. Or today? I don't even know. I think yesterday and today. Specify open file or folder. Oh, okay. This is a minor one. I noticed that when you right-click shortcuts, I had it to be always saying open file location. But you could also have a shortcut to a folder. And in those cases, it says open folder location. And it opens the parent of that folder. And the functionality already worked that way, but the wording I didn't have, even though Windows changes. So I want to just match Windows there and do their same wording. Let's just see what I changed here then. Pretty minor. So this is just the change here where I do, is it a folder? Then we say open folder location, otherwise open file location. And also I added a little condition here because I was noticing that the File Explorer desktop icon that leads right to the root, that one had an open folder location on it, but that doesn't make sense because that is the root folder. There's nothing beyond that. And that was the test here, where is it a root one? So if it's root, then don't even show this menu because then there's no parent to open, a parent folder. And then also there can be no URL if it's, but it's still a shortcut if it's a shortcut to an app. So the apps were showing open folder location, but the app had no root path, basically. Like, what do you show? The library? I don't have a .exe for WebAmp or something, so there's no real folder to show. So I fixed that a little bit. And if we look, it shouldn't have broken too much. So if I right-click that, no longer open file. But this one, yes, because this leads to an ISO. This just leads to an app, not to an MP3. If this WebAmp link was to like demo to an MP3, then it would work. So this still works as expected. This one no longer has the shortcut, which is what I wanted. No longer has the icon, sorry, or the context menu entry. Specify open file or folder. It's the little changes, you know, the polish. That's what I'm going for with most of this project, it feels like most days. So here's some cool ones I set. Here's a fun one. So set wallpaper from image. That's a cool one, right? Oh man, this changed massive? How much did I change here? Ooh, that's a hefty change. I think what happened here is I just extracted a few things at the same time. What are we at? Almost 2 hours. I have a little bit of water, a little bit of Coke. Let's do that. So this change isn't too overwhelming, but let's try to break it into clean pieces here. So this part here is just fixing Vanta waves and any future wallpaper generators that I have. This is just one of them that conforms to the wallpaper way of writing that I did. I have like a wallpaper generator thing that I made right here. Basically, it takes this one's a Vanta one. This is the wallpaper one. This function where it takes in an element and it has the, yeah, it just does stuff with that element, basically. This format could be used for non-Vanta wallpapers. But I don't have it well structured because I only have one kind of wallpaper right now, which is that animated waves. But now we're going to have waves or an image. So here's where I had to fix a little bit. Because I'm now conditionally loading one or the other, it was complaining sometimes that Vanta hadn't loaded yet when I was already getting into some effects that could have used it. So I just make this, I just had a little fallback here of an empty object so it doesn't complain there. Also, yeah, and then because that was empty, waves would be undefined. So we need to check for waves before it tries to trigger this. And then also here we can say that the element can be empty, or undefined actually, because we already were checking it here. And it could be null, but I also want it to be possible to be undefined, and so that we can use this function to reset itself, because destroy is always ran at the start. So now if you run an empty trigger of this, it'll just reset itself. which is what I want, and clear itself out and delete the canvas. So that's the first little piece, is fixing that. Now, here's the right-click menu where I added the feature. This looks like a big change, but it's mostly just boilerplate for how the wording is, because I haven't moved it anywhere else yet. Use file context menu. So the right-click menu, I've added a menu option here called set as desktop background. And I have a condition here where I do image. I have an image file extensions array that I already had. It's a set. And I say if it has the extension that we already were getting, then we add this menu item. So if it's an image, we add that menu item. And it has a submenu. So set as desktop background, and we do fill, fit, stretch, tile, or center. And I have created CSS stylings for all of these, but I still need to fine tune them in another episode because I'm not sure if every one of them perfectly coincides with how Windows is. They do in theory, but I think they might not be perfect, to be honest. And then I've added this set wallpaper command that's part of the session. That's basically all that the action is for all of these. Set wallpaper with the path, fill mode, fit mode, stretch mode, you know, in the mode. And I also imported the image file extension, constant, and session. So that one was simple. That's for the right-click menu itself. Now here is where I exported the session types. They were getting a little bit unruly. Let's go to the use session context. So if we see the use session context here at the top, we have a couple types here, and it's getting a little big. And when the types get a little big, for me, I like to move them into their own file often, typically within the same structure here. So I'm just going to, in the session folder, I'm going to make types.ts. And rather than take that one, I'm actually just going to copy the one that I already have. This one here, because I think this is the same as this one, except I've added the set wallpaper, where it takes in an image and it takes this fit. And I've defined a fit as a wallpaper fit that can only be one of these 5 options right now: the fill, fit, stretch, tile, and center. I like to define these when I can. These are the 5 that I have. I want to have a 6th one as well, because there is a 6th one in Windows. I don't remember what it is, span or something. Oh wait, no, span. Yeah, it is span, and I don't want to have it. I forgot. Now I remember what it is, and I remember why I don't want it. So these 5 are the ones I want. I just need to tweak them a bit later to make sure they're correct. Anyways, there's the types. So we've extracted those from the hook itself, the use context, the use session hook, sorry. And I'm going to update the session file with that extracted stuff, and we're going to take a look at the comparison here. So you can see here where oops. Can you see it if I remove it? No, you can't. So here's those types I was talking about that we took out. And now we have them, we have those here. So we're importing them here now. Here's where I've set the new things on session: the wallpaper fit and the wallpaper image, which are those things, the wallpaper fit type. The default will be fill. The image will be nothing by default. I've made a function here called set wallpaper that we're exporting, which just does those 2 things. It sets fit and it sets image. Sets them separately because you could, I suppose, apply them separately. And here, fit and image gets saved when they're changed. So on refresh, it will reload that image. There is a problem with that I'm going to have to solve in the next episode, where when you first load, it actually loads the animated waves, and then quickly, once the file system updates, then it loads the image. I'd rather you just see black until it loads the image than that like quick shift. It's too jarring. And then yeah, so here when it first loads, here's where it sets the wallpaper. But like I said, it's setting this after the other wallpaper's already loaded, which is a little too late. Otherwise, that's it for session. We have to fix this one here, types that we're importing it somewhere else. Let me see where. Let me do a quick search for it. Oops. Sorry guys, I'm jumping all over the place now here. I want to find this one other type. Now that I exported that one type, I need to fix it in a few places. Here, maybe it was just here actually. Was it here? Was it called types? Oh yeah, it's types plural. There we go. Were there any other places where I was using it like that? No, this is the export. That is something. This is the type export. Yeah, here we go. Okay, so I've updated it in that one place that it mattered. Only other file left now is the wallpaper usage component, which is use wallpaper. Surprise, surprise. The use wallpaper component. If you look at it right now, I think it's pretty simple. Yeah. So basically, it takes the desktop element and just runs the use wallpaper function, which can be associated with like Vanta waves, or you could make another function. Any function that just takes an element, an element, and says, "I'll put the thing there." You know, just give me an element and I'll give you a wallpaper. That's the idea here. And now we've changed it a bit here. This is the change. So this is a bit of a big change. This is really the meat and potatoes of this setting of the wallpaper. So we'll ignore this for a second and we'll just look at the change. So this was the command before, wallpaper desktop current. That still exists here. Basically, at the start, it checks if the wallpaper image exists in the session. So now that we have in the session, we have wallpaper image and wallpaper fit, we can look for it. And we say, okay, was there a wallpaper image? If there's not, then we do the original behavior of loading the wallpaper. But we also do this thing at the top here to reset, just in case, where we reset the desktop ref to clear the styling, because in the other version where there is a wallpaper image, we set the style. So we want to make sure to clear it here as well. Because if there's an image, I think it probably wouldn't override. Probably when you load this, the canvas element gets added, and that probably would go over top. But this is just good practice, because if the canvas crashed all of a sudden, you would see that image that you had before, which I don't think you want that behavior. So ignoring that, here's the piece of the new piece. So if there is a wallpaper image, we read the file like usual, and if there's no error, then what we do here, what the heck is it we're doing here? We take the, what the heck is this? So this is the desktop element. We look at its style of its current background image. Oh, okay. So we're checking if there's already an image on the styled component, on the component, sorry. Have I already set the background image on this element? And the reason for that is because these images are being loaded in the file system and creating buffer URLs, and these buffer URLs need to be cleaned up. So every time we set the wallpaper, I check, is there already a wallpaper? If there is, let's clean it up. And I do this here. It's not the cleanest way to do it, but basically on the styling, on the background image, this should be a string in theory. Yeah, this would be a string all the time. I do a regex match where it'll have to be in quotes, because as you see here, when I set it, I put it in quotes at the bottom here. So I look for those quotes up here to try to capture just the URL without the rest of this piece, this wording here. Or sorry, it would just be this wording here. The string would be like URL brackets and quotes is the URL. That's what I want. So if I can capture that URL from the match group, it'll be on the one element, not the 0th element. So I say, if you got a wallpaper, clean it up. Okay, that's just the cleanup part. And then here I run the wallpaper command, kind of like how I run here to reset. Remember how I said if we pass in nothing, it resets. It clears that, it'll delete that Vanta waves canvas. And then we do kind of the invert of this, where we reset and then we apply, you know, like this one's set attribute and then run wallpaper. This one's run wallpaper and then set attribute. So after we clear the Vanta one, then we set the styling. And what we set is we set the background image to that buffer one that I was saying, the URL, which is a buffer to URL of the file contents we got. That'll give us the background image. And then here's where we set the fit. So we have that wallpaper fit that we got from the session. And remember, that'll be, what's that'll be? It'll be fill, fit, stretch, tile, or center. But we need to make an equivalent version of that into the CSS. So what I've done is I've kind of made this little mapping here, where it's a record mapping where you take a wallpaper fit and you return a string that's going to be some CSS. So in the case of fill, we return a rule of background size cover. In the case of fit, we would say the background size is contain and there's no repeat. In the case of tile, we just say contain, and contain by default does repeat. Stretch is background size 100% auto. Center is no repeat, position center, attachment fixed. So I've tried to make equivalents here, but I'm not sure if those are perfect. But you get the idea. I've made this mapping so that this wording can fit into CSS attributes. That was it for that. So let's test it out. Let me just make sure I've saved everything here. Okay, so it should, if we refresh here, if we right click, so right, we need an image. I'm going to find my wallpaper that I'm currently using on my desktop as the example, which is like a spacey wallpaper. Here it is here. So I'm going to drag it on from my computer to my app. So here it is here. As you can see, the image is the wrong aspect ratio. I have a tag to fix that as well, but let's ignore that for now. So it's an image type. So you see if I right click this, we get open, delete, rename. But if this one, it's an image type, I right click it, here we get some different results. So we don't get open because I don't have an image viewer yet. We can download it, we can delete it, we can rename it, or we can set as desktop background. And then we have all these options. So if I say fill, there we go. So that's my space wallpaper. And if I right click and I say set a fit, we get a different position there, not tiled. If we say tile, we get more of like a tiled version. We say stretch, we get something that looks just like tile, unfortunately. And if we say center, we get something that it's hard to tell is centered because of how big it is. Maybe we would try with an image of my face instead. Let's try to set that as center. There we go. So that's centered works. And if I set fill, it's more like that. If I set fit, it's more like that. Tile is more like that. And stretch, I think, looks just like tile at the moment. Oh, stretch looks more like how fit looked, I think. Or like fill? Which one of that? Fill and stretch look the same in this case. Okay. It's cool that they're kind of different. I think the center one was nice for this. This looks more like how my desktop looks like on Windows. This is kind of creepy because it's looking more like how my actual desktop looks like. But there we go. That's the basics. So we now can set wallpaper images. Now, watch if I refresh, you'll see that the canvas the waves appears first. Watch. Refresh. Waves, and then the image. So you see, I do have now the ability for it to remember the image and load it on the fly, but there's that little handoff period that I haven't fixed yet. That's good. That's another episode, though. I don't want to do that right now. Let's just save this because this is a cool change that we did. So set wallpaper from image. Nice. We got the use wallpaper hook. We did a little Vanta tweaking to make it work better with that new scenario. There's our right-click menu there. Update because we moved types. Moved the types here and made the little session edition. Okay. I think we're nearing the last couple commits here. What's left? We did the wallpaper. This is a simple one. Fix test type. Okay. Looks like I missed another one here. I forgot it again, so it happens. Here we go. So this one here is wrong. I didn't catch that on me, but this is now moved to types. There we go. And that one is correct because that is the hook itself. Okay. So we're going to use the exact same message of fix test type because, yeah, I broke it. I broke the type, and that would have broke the test too. There we go. Ugh, got some fly bothering me now. Sorry, guys. Guys and girls. And whatever. Move hook to utils. That I think I already did. Right. This was that double-click hook. Remember, I decided to move that to utils. Okay. And then last but not least is this selection visuals. Do I want to do this? I think it's time. On episode 26, I actually had a good chunk of this code. The basics of it is like, you know when you click in Windows down on the desktop and you drag, you get that like selection box? I've made that. And I've been waiting till I had more pieces of the file entry selection focus logic to do it. And we've done that today, where now we can select multiple items and we can hold control. So now we're one step closer to being able to do a selection and have it select multiple icons as you're doing that drag select. That being said, I don't have that part yet. I have those items are selectable in multiples now. You saw that I've added that. And I'm going to show you adding the drag thing. But I haven't put those pieces together yet. That's going to be next episode. But I think it's time to get this visual part in so that I can not worry about that and I can focus on the functional parts. It's a somewhat big change. We're just going to dump it in, I think, for the most part. And then kind of go over it. So let's go over it in pieces. Let's start with the most basics here. Let's start with the file manager for how it'll work. I like to start with the hooks when I've made them really basic, because then it's almost like pseudocode sometimes, honestly, the way hooks are written. It's like, just do this somehow, magically. Use magic, you know? Might as well be the name of a hook. Use magic. Funny name for a hook, actually. Only I had a reason for a hook like that. So let's see. This is the file manager. What have I done? So I'm going to have to import a few commands that I don't have yet. This styled selection, that's essentially the component. That's this visual component. And the use selection is the hook. Now I've added a hook here where I know, I get a Boolean saying, is it selecting, the styling to show for the selection, and events to be, where are the events supposed to be put on? So the file manager needs to know if selecting is occurring. The reason for that that I've done is that when selecting is happening and the mouse goes over something in the file manager, it's still triggering pointer events like hover and stuff. And it's causing like a hover effect to happen when in Windows, the icons don't have hover effect when you're doing that selection box. So we need the file manager to be able to know when selecting is occurring. Now the file manager is going to have the event, the mouse down event. And when mouse down occurs, more events are going to be added, like the mouse up and the mouse move events. And when you mouse up, then those events are gone and just the mouse down event will be back. And then, so it's triggering the events, and when the events occur, make certain things happen, then it'll say this will become true and this styling will have a style. And then when that occurs, we'll say we have another element here, kind of like we do with peek window, where we have a Boolean saying whether something should show, and then we do a component where we pass a little piece in from the hook. In this case, the styling. Now, the reason I'm doing styling here, even though this is a styled component and I could pass in positional information, is I found with styled components that's a really bad idea. If you have styled components, you have something that's going to change often. You want to do it in like this kind of technique where you're just setting the style straight on the element, because styled components will make a new class for every state. So if I started doing a little dragging, I would get errors saying like styled components just made 400 classes, you know, and it suggested against that. And this was essentially the workaround, is just straight up apply the CSS styling to a styled component when it's something that's changing so fast, so that styled component doesn't think anything's changed and it doesn't have to keep remaking all these classes and just making a mess of everything. Now let's do the styled file manager. Remember, we added some logic in there for selected. I think that's all that's added here. This is the one here, the icon one. Yeah, here we go. So I just added some props, the selected prop. Now, why it's here, I think there's a reason why it needs to be external. Right, because the file manager props, the styled file manager, there's multiple of them because they're actually views that I'm using. I'm using views that are based on styled components. So I'm keeping the props external to where the views keep track of types, because the other view, the list view of icons, could also have this selected idea, but they don't, because the list view is single click. So when you click something right away, it just pops up. Whereas with this, it's not like that. And it doesn't, actually, yeah, it just doesn't, with the list view, you're not going to be doing that selection thing, so we don't need to worry about that. Anyways, when we got selecting, we say the li items should have pointer events of none. Although, actually, now that I think about this, this might be a short-term solution, because I think in the future, the file entry could do this. The file entry, wait, the li is here. Oh, yeah. And that's where the hover effects are too. Maybe this is okay for now. So this just disables the hover effects when you're selecting. Let's move on to the next file. The next one, this is that type I was telling you about. So as you see here, we have a views index for the styled file manager. And within that, that's where I've got that new prop here, the styled file manager props, one of them being selecting. And then I say the file manager view is made up of a styled file entry and a styled file manager, and that styled file manager can have styled file manager props, and one of the props optionally is selecting. That was the type update there. Here is just a color I've added, highlight background, right? I think I had the highlight border, and then I manually was setting the background. And basically the background is just going to be pretty much the same as this, but a lower opacity. Yeah, this is the opacity, so lower opacity. Let's go into the code and change that. Highlight. Here it is. We'll add another color to our theme called the highlight background. I think we're ready for the big files. Is there only just one, really? 2. So there's this, yeah, the selection here. Let's get into this use selection hook because that's the big one. So in File Manager, we're going to make a folder called selection. Where is that? Components, system, files, File Manager. And let's make another folder here called selection. And within that, it was called use selection.ts. And that's the hook. You got to have a hook. Okay. Let's take a look at this hook. Let's just look at the hook straight because there's no need for a diff. It's brand new. Here are the things that it exports. We know about the is selecting Boolean, the styling, that's CSS, and we knew about the events. We didn't know what the events were, but I told you guys so there's mouse down to trigger things initially, and then there's move to do the sizing. Leave mouse, because if you trigger too far and you go off the browser, that's like pressing up basically. So if your mouse goes off the browser or if you let go of the down, those are when I want to reset and get rid of it. And you can see those matched down here, whereas mouse leave and mouse up is just reset selection. This is just the export of those types that are mentioned here. And then let's get into what we're setting here. So we keep track of a position and a size. And we try to export the default ones. By default, it's empty. But we try to get the X, Y, and the height and width. And I've abbreviated height and width as HW because I use height and width a few times here. So I just didn't want to get any confusion there. And keep it simple. So we got X, Y, HW. That seems easy enough to understand. That's the box. So where it's positioned and what its height and width are, basically. That's all that this part's doing. So with the mouse move event, we get the X and Y of where the mouse is, which are these page X, page Y variables. And we set the size, because remember, you click down, and then based on where you position it, that's setting the size. So the size is based on the position of the mouse minus the previous position. Yeah, that makes sense on a mouse move, I guess. Does it? The mouse position and its previous position. I mean, trying to think about it, it doesn't make as much sense, but this does work. So this is correct in some ways from a this makes sense point of view. I'm going to format this a little better because it's hard to read. Let's see if Prettier will let me do this. No, it wants it one line. Oh, okay, there. No, that's cool. I prefer this formatting. So that's if the mouse moves when it's already down. So for when the mouse goes down, we check the target too and make sure that it's inside the container that the use selection is going to be used in. Is that where use selection is being used? Let me double check that. That's in here. Yeah, right. Use selection passes in the file manager ref. Right, which is the ref to the entire thing. Okay. Why do we need that? Let's double check. So could it not be in there? So the mouse down, why would the mouse down? Okay, it has to be on the container. Okay, that makes sense. Because you could do mouse down on an element, like the file entry element, and we wouldn't want this to trigger in that case. So I think that's what this is checking for, to make sure when you click somewhere empty on in the file entry, on the container itself. That's how it is in Windows too. If you have to click somewhere empty to get that file thing. So when you click that somewhere empty, we reset the size in case it was set, we make it empty, and we set the position as wherever you just clicked. And then once position is set, if you go here to the events, there's a logic here that says if there's a position, that's when we add those other handlers. That's when we add the move, the leave, and the up. Otherwise, those are never there because that's just less efficient. Here's the logic for how we do the has size, has position checks. They're simple enough. I just make sure everything's a number, basically. And that's how I decide whether or not we want to have any selection stylings. If there's size and position, then we do the logic of how it physically is supposed to look, how its height, its width, and where it's positioned. And then as far as reset, all reset does is just clear both of those entries and make them empty objects. So the logic here of how it displays is the height is based on the absolute number of the height of what was set here. So when the mouse moves, remember we do that, the difference between the two numbers from the move. And that can be a negative number or it can be a positive number. Like let's say the position was here and you started going that way, it's positive. You go this way, it's negative. But it's the same amount, you know, negative 50, positive 50. So that's why I do this math absolute. So that gets you the absolute number, whether it be this way or that way. Just give me the height or the width that I want to set. And then for the position, I'm using this translate to move the box. So the box is essentially just sitting there in one position, and then I'm using CSS to kind of move it around. And I don't know how to easily explain this math to you, but you have to trust me, I guess, on it. The x position plus the width, or wait, the x position is plus this. This is some conditional logic here. So if the width is less than 0, then we use the width. Otherwise, we use 0. Right, okay. So I think that's to know, because when you first click, if you go left, you're going negative. If you go right, you're going positive. You go up, you're going negative. You go down, you're going positive. So I think the logic there is if you're going left, then you're negative, which will mean you have a negative width. And in that case, just use the width. Does that make any sense? Oh, in that case, that's what you add to the position. Yeah, I don't want to explain this logic because I don't completely... I looked this up a little bit, but at the same time, I tested it to make sure it worked. And I tried to whittle it down to the least bit. But at the same time, it's kind of hard to explain this abstract concept. But let's just trust this math and let's just try it now. We're missing one piece. We're missing the component. It's simple, luckily. Very few lines. Here they are right here. It's called the styled selection. It goes in that folder with selection. Styled selection.ts. And it's a styled component. It's a span, so it doesn't push any items around. It's kind of just floating there, but it can visually appear. And you can do bounding rects on it, so you can know where it is anyways. So its background is that highlighted background color we set. The border is highlight color. We already had that color. It's 1 pixel solid. Position's absolute, and then we're going to... Wait, does position have to be absolute even? Because I'm doing a transform. It's a good question. I think position has to be absolute with transform. And then z-index I've got because positionally it wasn't quite right at first. It was going... The file entries had a z-index of 1. So this has to also have 1 to at least be on the same level as them, basically. Let's try it out. I don't know if it'll work first go. Let me reset the wallpaper and stuff. I want my animated wallpaper back for now. So let's try it out. I'm going to click down and move. There it is. So you see we got this selection. We click and we go bottom right. We get that. We click and we go top left. We get that. And it's pretty responsive. You can see it goes over the icons. You can see if I go out of the window, it goes away. So I move the mouse outside, it disappears. If I let go, it disappears. But if I click down, there we go. So now in the future, I'm going to have to figure out when I highlight over these, I want this box plus this box. I want to figure out what the intersection points are. And whenever it's intersecting, it's selected. And when it's not intersecting, it's unselected. And we might even have to do an invert thing, because if I highlight 2 of these and then I were to select over it. Oh, there's another issue. Oh, wait, no, is that an issue? I was going to say if I click here and then I go to select. How does that work in Windows? If I click and then I go to select. Oh, yeah, it resets. That's okay then. So that's good. So yeah, I just have to do this intersection logic, but that's going to be another episode. I've been messing around with that and trying to get Copilot to help me, but it hasn't helped me yet. The GitHub Copilot. If you go here, like, I'll show you GitHub Copilot. So let's just say, check if 2 rectangles intersect. Okay. Enter. Const intersects. Okay. Okay, give me that. All right, that's interesting. Let's close the function. Give me more function. Give me more information. Copilot's working. Copilot, go. Okay, so that's what Copilot just wrote for me. Is that even a valid function? Oh, it just broke a bunch of stuff. What happened there? Let me cut this out and then undo all my messiness here. Let me just cut this out and put it up top here outside of this function. So that's what Copilot just tried to create. That's the monstrosity. What's the by that it made? That doesn't make sense there. Was that? Oh, that's by. Okay. The coloring's a little messed up there. It probably shouldn't have picked that variable name. Otherwise, that function's solid. Okay, so that's what it wrote. This is the fun thing with GitHub Copilot. Like, I can start looking at this and see, was that right? I mean, there was no height and width here. What was this B? What's B supposed to be? Why does it think B has width, but it exported height and width here? Maybe if I just do this, leave those blank. Yeah, let AB extract itself here. X is AX, Y is AY, B dot width. I mean, there could be some logic here. I don't know. It's fun to play with anyways. Copilot's been fun for like giving ideas, but I want to think on it myself because I've already gotten lost in Copilot like steering me the wrong way a few times with those suggestions. So anyways, we have the selection now. So we have all the tools to continue work on making it more like Windows. What's this complaining about? Let me close this and open this again. Is it still complaining? Huh. Oh, now it's fine. Okay. Maybe I had something worded a little wrong there. Selection. That's correctly worded, so. What did I call this thing? I called this selection visuals. Let's call it that still, because it's not too functional at this point. Selection visuals. And I think we're ready to commit that. Great. With that one done, that is it. That's it, guys and girls. Thanks for tuning in. That was a fun one. We added some cool features. If you like the video, please throw me a like. If you want to support me, you want to motivate me, you want to follow what I'm doing, please subscribe to my channel. Other than that, leave comments if you liked it. Criticism is always welcome. The constructive kind, typically. That's all I have to say about that. I had a good time streaming with you guys. I think I'm worn out. It's 11:25. I've been streaming for 2.5 hours, which isn't so bad. Sometimes I do 3-hour ones, but I think we've gone through a lot today. I want to call it a day. Thanks for tuning in. See you in the next one.